Welcome to Lavender Recap. In today's video, we'll be going through an American action adventure and superhero movie from the year 2018 titled Venom, which features the Marvel comic character by the same name. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Eddie Brock is a journalist who sets out to expose a billionaire scientist, but instead finds himself fighting aliens bent on destroying the planet. The film begins with a spacecraft colliding with Earth, and we already have a problem because a sample of some kind of rare organism or something similar was lost in the collision. However, because one of the astronauts is still alive, they focus on saving him first. The problem is that he wasn't completely alive, but something had gotten into him and it was attacking the doctors at the time, and it ended up in the body of this unlucky girl. The next day, we see Eddie Brock, the main character, waking up with his lover Anne, weighing and planning a date for that night. And it's there that we learn that this individual is a reporter who's determined to expose the bad ones. He comes to work at a short time later and immediately approaches his supervisor, who arranges for him to speak with Drake, a millionaire who wants to reaffirm that his rockets are okay and that the crash was an accident. Our protagonist dislikes it, but he has no choice because he has no other option. Eddie gets up early the next day to get some water, and just in time, an email regarding a lawsuit against the millionaire for the killings of 3 people in the form of genetic analysis appears on Anne's computer. But the next morning, Eddie accused Drake of being a murderer, and he's thrown out of the building and fired. As if that wasn't bad enough, his girlfriend is also dismissed as a result of him, so she returns his engagement ring and then walks away. The fact is, the unfortunate guy was correct because Drake is concealing something nefarious, and we see that the doctor first appears at a carnival, where she murders a large number of people before moving on to the body of a vulnerable woman. 6 months later, the millionaire is attempting to merge a bizarre organism with a bunny, and they've discovered that the symbiosis, which is similar to a fusion between 2 organisms, requires compatibility between the two. So far, everything has gone well. Drake, on the other hand, becomes insane and wants to start testing on humans, and despite Dora's objections, he threatens her and she has no choice but to comply. Eddie, on the other hand, meets a girl named Maria who lives on the street near a store on his way home. He grabs a couple of beers and starts looking for work as soon as he gets home. When it comes time for Drake's first test in humans, the poor guy dies in the most agonizing way possible. Eddie comes to the store later that night, but his friend is no longer there. Nevertheless, he doesn't notice because Dora is waiting for him, and she explains that her boss is killing people on the street to do his studies. He tells her that he's unable to assist her, and for some reason, he considers stopping by his ex's house, which is a bad idea because she's just arrived with her new boyfriend, Dan, who leaves them alone to discuss there. Even though he misses her and wants to get back together with her, we can't see that Anne is still upset. So after the refusal, he reconsiders and phones Dora, who assists him in infiltrating the facility and explains that the strange organisms are aliens known as symbiotes or something similar. After that, Eddie enters the lab where he discovers Maria imprisoned in a kind of prison, and in an attempt to save her, but all he gets is her attacking him and passing him that weird object. He tries to flee while still conscious when he realizes that he has gained some new skills. He's a little shaken when he gets home and contacts Dora to see whether she's okay, but then some strange things begin to happen to him. Later, Eddie comes to his senses and begins sorting through the images in the midst of the shambles he's created before interrupting his ex's meal because she's the one person he trusts. What occurs is that he gets an attack in the middle of it all, starting everyone. Dan then takes him to have an MRI, but the guy has some type of seizure during the procedure, so he sends him home to recover and tells him to phone him when he has more information. Dora was discovered by Drake's team in the meantime, but that's something we'll save for later. Eddie is now attempting to exert control over whatever is residing within him. When Anne calls to inform him that he has a parasite, which would explain the vomiting and the voice in his brain, he's alarmed. Returning to Dora, she apologizes to Drake, who accepts her apologies but demands that she inform him who broke into the lab. The problem is that he discovers who it was. He becomes so enraged that he abandons her to one of the alien organisms. At the same time, he sent a crew to Eddie's residence to apprehend him. Although it won't be simple because the symbiote seizes control, eliminates all guards in his path, and eventually escapes. He looks in the mirror and sees something that isn't quite right. So while discussing the symbiote, he begins to process what's happening to him. Drake, on the other hand, discovers that he has completed the symbiosis and goes insane. Therefore, he must arrest him as soon as possible. Eddie gets on his motorcycle and starts running as they start after him with everything they have. However, nothing happens because he now has a friend who will protect him from the drones. And it's during this chase that we see all of our characters' new abilities, which save his life multiple times and even beyond Drake's hopes. They still manage to drive him over, but just as they are ready to apprehend him, this creature takes over his entire body and manages to flee. The organism appears to have the ability to rejuvenate itself as it emerges from Eddie's body for the first time, introducing itself as Venom. He informs him that he's planning to utilize it as a car and that he needs his assistance. The lady from the fair, on the other hand, arrives at the airport and her symbiote transforms into the body of a passing girl. Dan then learns that what happens to Eddie is far worse than he had anticipated. As a result, he requests Anne's assistance in getting him to the hospital as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Eddie seeks to return to his former employment to present his proof to his supervisor. His friend Richard, on the other hand, will not let him through. After a few setbacks, Venom assists him in getting into the location where they talk while Eddie delivers the proof of the boss. And we see that these two don't get along as badly as they appear, and as he delivers the information, they get the hell out of there. Anne arrives at the airport and drives him to the hospital. Venom, on the other hand, likes her and will not harm her. And for some reason, this object transforms into a kind of psychologist at that point, assisting him with his love problems. At the same time, the airport girl arrives at Drake's lab, and this other organism takes advantage of the opportunity to get retribution. Dan wants to admit him to the hospital as soon as they arrive, since according to his studies, he's dying. However, Venom becomes enraged and attempts to murder him. Fortunately, Anne switches on the MRI machine and leaves it on for long enough that it causes the object to emerge from his body, so they leave it confined in that room. Eddie flees and Dan inquires about the situation. However, Venom takes advantage of the opportunity to escape through the vent and ends up inside the small dog. Furthermore, the guards arrive at the hospital and kidnap our protagonist. Drake then begins questioning him and attempting to make him feel guilty. And because he now has a symbiote inside him, he orders Eddie to be killed while he works on bringing other aliens to the world. However, just as they are about to kill him, Venom emerges in Anne's body and saves his life. She also manages to introduce the parasite back into this body. And it's there that he explains that Drake's symbiote is Riot, which is the most powerful of them all and acts as a leader. And then we find that Venom wants to stop the leaders because if they all seize control of the Earth, he'll be reduced to nothing. And he seems to like his time in this world. Drake is also seen getting ready for the trip with his new companion. But for whatever reason, he then begins murdering all of the scientists. That's when our team shows up to try to stop him, although it'll be a little challenging. They must still attempt, so a rather intense battle ensues, culminating with Riot physically eating Venom. Fortunately, Anne arrives to assist them and successfully separates the two symbiotes from their hosts. As a result, the battle is now between humans. The problem is that Drake reclaims his friend, and this doesn't end well for our protagonist. But just as his friend arrives to revive him, he manages to damage the spaceship as it takes off, and then on takeoff, he ends up blowing everything to hell. Even after the evil guys are defeated, Venom sacrifices his life to defend his host. Eddie and Anne finally find a solution to their troubles. The most important thing is that Venom is still inside him, so they'll have to establish some ground rules to keep him from devouring anyone. But because the beast is still hungry, they walk to the store to purchase him something, and fortunately for them, the thief from before enters at that very moment, so they give him what he deserves. They also take advantage of the occasion to fill his stomach. Ooh, and before we leave, Eddie is seen attending the famous interview with a serial murderer who threatens to kill everyone. However, this is left for the next sequel.